Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, one of the things I love to do, and maybe I have a short attention span, but I like to get on YouTube. Yeah, I'll watch longer videos, but I love to get on there and there's shorter videos on there and just how little household hacks, how do you keep the washing machine from wobbling? I mean, what are just little things like that, wow, that's really cool. I can't wait to go home, or I can't wait till tomorrow. I've got that same problem. I've got last summer I had a sliding glass door, so I couldn't I don't know what it was. I mean, I didn't know what it was, but then I just figured, I'm just going to get on YouTube and see what I can find, and found a short little hack, little video, just kind of how to fix it. And I know hacking gets a bad connotation with respect to computer hacking, but I just love the notion of little life hacks, things that can make a difference around the house or just with whatever. And that really leads into, well, that doesn't really, actually, it truly leads into my guest today, Christopher Hadnagy, Hadnagy, excuse me. And he's written a book called Human Hacking: Win Friends, Influence People, and Achieve Your Goals. And the book is filled with insights on how empathy, generosity, and kindness can be harnessed to navigate the complexities of the modern world, which is perfect for what we talk about here on Networking RX. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Give us a little background, because I'm in reading your bio. It's your your bio is more kind of a left brain expert, processes, global security sort of a person, and this is anything but. This is very, very right brain stuff.
It's an interesting path. So I started off in the network auditing world, so where we get paid by a company to hack their network and see where their vulnerabilities were. Kind of like think of it getting a physical from a doctor. And I was reading all these books from people like Frank Abagnale. He's the Catch Me If You Can guy.
Yeah.
Kevin Mitnick. He's a famous social engineer that went to prison for hacking the FBI. People like that. Victor Lustwig, a con man that sold the Brooklyn Bridge and the Eiffel Tower a few times. And I was fascinated by what these guys can do with just words. And I said, I wonder if I can do this legally for our clients, like test the human element. So I started to do that. And the pivotal change for me was I had a CEO say to me, okay, Chris, it worked. Now, how do I fix it? And I went, beats me. And he went, if I went to my auto mechanic and I said, hey, what's this noise? And he said, that's the brakes. And I said, fix it. And he went, I don't know how. I'd never go back to that mechanic again. I'm like, that's a great analogy. So I started to buy all these books on neuroscience, nonverbals, facial expressions, influence, persuasion, elicitation, and I read everything I could, and I built a framework. And that framework became the very first world's framework for social engineering, which led to my first four books. And it was now jumping forward 15 years that I realized these skills are not just for security world, that we can use them in everyday relationships. We can use them in negotiations. We can use them with your spouse, use them with your employer, your employees, that there's such a broad range of how to use these skills in a non-manipulative way, and it will leave them feeling better for having met you. And you can achieve your goals by doing this. So that was kind of the transition from that security world into writing this book that you
Yeah.
showed us.
Well, the two are not terribly far detached, in my
Right.
opinion.
Yep.
Um, we as humans, I say we're hardwired. We're hardwired to do certain things, and the brain is really just a very, very powerful computer. And so it's much the same, really.
It is. You and I were talking before we started the show, and it was interesting because I had a similar conversation with a federal agent, and I was asking him, how do you interrogate or interview a terrorist?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I would be so angry. I would be so disgusted. I don't know if I can do that. And he said to me, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to really think about the answer. What does a terrorist want? I'm like, oh, to kill people. It's like, no, no, that's too basic. What
Yeah.
does he want? And I thought about it and thought about it. I said, he wants to please what he believes his God wants from him. It's like, right. So can you identify with having faith? Can you identify with wanting to please a higher power? And I said, yeah. He goes, there's your common ground. Now, you're not going to go murder people to do it, but there's your common ground. Now you have common ground. You could actually
Yeah.
have a conversation with that person. It was mind blowing for me. It was like,
Yeah.
that opens up a whole new realm of communications with people that normally I would have been like, oh, that's gross. Now I can actually find a common ground to communicate with them.
Why do you think this is important? I mean, well, let me preface all of that. There are so many companies that well, I have a friend. He had a company. He was an executive recruiter, and LinkedIn came along and just decimated the business. Um, and he's of the mind that, well, with AI and all this stuff, things are going to go away. I'm not in that camp. I
Hmm.
think I think what you do, what you're about, is unduplicatable, really, for a long, long time. But I'll let you answer.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think AI is going to be a tool, but we look pre-pandemic, and we rarely had meetings over the internet. It was not, it was so uncommon to be like, oh yeah, send me a Zoom link or send me a Teams link. It was, hey, if you want to sell me something, you better fly up here and come visit me. Maybe a phone call here or there to set it up, some emails back and forth. Everything was in person. Now,
Right,
pandemic happens, and we get stuck in a 4x4 black box where I can only see from your mid chest up. I can't see any of your nonverbals. We get stuck on our phones 24/7. Everything's on the internet,
right,
and the effect of social media has turned us into such a siloed group of people that Instagram and Facebook and these other social medias only feed you what you already believe. So it's just no more expanding of your horizons, no more of questioning the things that you thought were right. It's like, oh, you think this? Well, that I'm just going to feed you those stories. You think every cop is bad? Great, that's all you're going to see on your Instagram now, right? So it became this point where I'm like, the world has become such an angry place that forgot how to communicate.
yeah,
So I feel it's so important for the next generation because I look at my daughter, my son, they're attached to those phones, and I need them to learn how to look someone in the eye, how to read a nonverbal, how to say something, how to have a difficult conversation without having to be brutal, without having to be a brute. You can have that conversation and still have empathy.
yeah. No, you in your bio information, you talked about the challenges of increasing social awkwardness and
Mm,
isolation in our digital age. I mean,
yeah.
um, I mean, there's a lot to that. Somebody will text me, and it's like, all right, I'm just going to call,
Yeah.
right? I'm just going to call because I mean, in my mind, text is good for, I have a flat tire, I'm going to be late,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I'm running
Right.
late. That's good. It's not for, you know, I don't know what's bothering you.
Solving a problem. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
right. Yeah.
I'll do the same thing where if I have a problem with somebody, I need to talk to them. I'll outline it maybe in an email or text and say, hey, can we jump on a phone to discuss this?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a surprise attack. They know exactly what I'm doing, but you can't do emotion through a text
No.
message or an email.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's whatever emotion you're feeling at that moment when you're reading it is what you're going to put into that message. And if you're having a bad day, you're going to read that as I'm angry or mad at you or something like that.
Right. Well, what I was alluding to is my kids might text me, and I'll call them right away, right? I probably
Yeah.
needed a text saying, hey, we should talk about this. But I would call and they wouldn't answer. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I know
Yeah.
you're right by your phone,
Yeah.
and eventually, I kind of had the conversation with them. And then, they're adults now, and so they see it, right? And I think, you talk about the autism spectrum. There are lots of spectrums, and um, social skills is a spectrum, right?
Yeah. It is.
And I think my kids are partially because of who I am and what I do, and they're pretty far along on that social spectrum, and they see the frustrations now they're out in the working world.
Yeah.
People who aren't.
Yep.
Um, I don't know. It's um, now. Can you share? Let's talk some examples of the importance of empathy and generosity, kindness. Do you have specific examples you could share? How these things can be harnessed for effective communication and influence?
Sure. So I had an employee, And I do a lot of communication profiling, right? So communication profiling meaning like I communicate very direct, maybe someone else is indirect, maybe someone else is more about the people, I'm more about the task. So I try to understand when I have to go meet with someone, like what kind of a communicator are they? I had this employee really their quality has dropped way down. And it was getting to the point like where like we were saying, hey, this is really not that good. Can you redo it? Oh, that report's got a lot of errors. Can you please double check?
Right.
It was getting to the point where it was like, okay, now they're just, it seemed to me in my head like they didn't care about the job anymore. But I said, before, I can't assume that. So let's have a meeting. So I say, hey, I want to get together with you. What to say his name is Bob. But I want to get together with you and talk about some of the performance issues that we've been dealing with lately. So we schedule a meeting, we get on there, and now I have a decision. I can come in as the angry boss, like, hey man, you got to start fixing your stuff, or this is it. You're going to get your 30 days, and if you don't fix it, that's it. You're going to get your performance program, and then
Yep.
you're out. That's one option. Another option is to sit back and say, hey, when I hired you, you were amazing. You were one of my top people, and something's happened. So what's going on in your life that has affected your quality? So we went that route. And literally, the guy just started breaking down, crying. He's having family problems. His mom was sick. He's having financial issues. They might be getting a divorce. I mean, all these things came out. And it was like, now I had a reason. And I'm like, okay, Bob, what can we do to help? Because I don't want to put the pressure on you. I can't just like give you, months and months off, but what can we do? Can we maybe lessen some of your responsibility or put you in places that you can still excel until you can figure out what you're doing in the future? And we were able to do that and retain him. And it's much better than just kind of threatening, right? Having
Yeah.
that empathy and saying, I know something's going on, so let's figure it out and let's see if it's fixable. Now, if his answer was, I used to love working here and I just don't, then I wouldn't have had the same answer to him. I would
Yeah.
have went, I hear you. And you know what? To save the company and your happiness, I would suggest that you take the next 30 days and you look for a job. You don't have to work anymore, but this is the 30 days. You look for a job. We'll keep paying you. You go look for a job for the next 30 days because I don't want you being here if you're unhappy
Yeah.
and handling it that way. So depending on his answer, we would answer it a different way, but it was so much better approach to be empathetic than to come in and be like, "Hey, I pay you a good salary. I brought you in from nothing. I taught you everything. Why aren't you doing better?" Right? That's one way, and the other way just works so much better.
Do you see, when I say society, the professional community, the work community advancing in this area? Um,
Hmm.
I guess I you would
It's
think that they would, right? I mean, we're
yeah,
just so much more enlightened, but
yeah.
I apparently not.
The last few years in America, at least, look at what's happened, and
Yeah.
I don't really talk politics. I don't talk it, but j
Yeah.
just for a second, we can see how the people are divided. They're angry. I remember being a kid, and my dad would have like a disagreement with someone in the neighborhood. They're drinking some whiskey by the fireplace. They talk some news, politics, business, and they would disagree. The guy would get up and leave, go home next week, and they'd do it all over again. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, oh no, now I hate Joe because he doesn't agree with me, or we can't play with his kids, or he's a loser and a moron, right? None of that. Nowadays, it's like if you and I don't have the same belief system, I have to hate you. I can't
Yeah.
just disagree with you. I don't know where we got there or how we got there. And again, I said it before, I really feel, and I'm on social media, so I'm not anti-social media, but I
Yeah.
really feel the siloed nature of what social media does to us has ruined our ability to communicate with empathy and with open mind. Because it literally is, if you type into Instagram, cop hates black people, that's all you'll see.
Yeah.
You won't see any good stories. It will just be every story of a cop being a jerk, pulling out his gun, doing something terrible, and then you'll believe every cop is bad. And
Yeah.
it will change your whole trajectory in life. You'll see a police officer, you'll be like, that jerk. And you'll hate him. You don't even know him.
Yeah.
Right? So social media has turned us into this people where fake news. I've actually watched my kids tell me something as if it was 100% real. They know it's real. I saw it, and I'll open up a browser and go to like Snopes and say, let's, and bam, 100% fake. Made up. But
Yeah.
I saw pictures. I'm like, you can't believe those things anymore,
Yeah.
right? So it's I don't see people getting better at it. I see people want to be better at it. And I think that's why podcasts like yours, the work that I'm doing, these are important in society still because I think people want to go back to that. They're just lost and don't know how.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's your answer, right? Is to I guess why, and probably why it's not getting better. We're recording this. This is coming out at late March, early April, but we're recording this on January 21st, the day after the inauguration
Yeah.
of Donald Trump. And man, I mean, it's just November 5th, people were. I mean, my wife has a friend that she walks with every Saturday, and they didn't really talk politics, but right after the election, kind of revealed who they voted for, and there was a tense moment there, like I can't believe you voted for him,
Yeah.
you know, um, and we just made a point of trying to listen to podcasts
Yeah.
in long form, independent podcasts. It's like they're just gonna,
I'm with you.
yep, just okay. We're gonna lay this out very methodically. This is, it's not a 30-second, this is what happened,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, um, I don't know.
People have become very disagreeable, right? So even like what you just said, like it's like, oh, now that that got revealed, there was a tense moment. And
Yeah,
I look at that and I say, well, I mean, why should the friend be tense with you or with your wife? Why should there be
yeah,
any tense? Like you cannot like a person or not agree with their policies, but this is what happened. It's already done. It's over. So all we can do now is take what is happening, whether we agree with it or not, and try our hardest to make our little section of the world better.
yeah,
Right? So
right.
my job is to empower my children to be the best they can be, to empower my employees to be the best they can be. And if I do that, maybe my employees do that to their family and their kids. And
Yeah,
now it grows. Right. I don't think like I'm Gandhi and I'm not gonna go change the world. I'm not gonna have a bunch of followers listening to everything I say. But if I can change a small group of people
yeah.
and then they do that, that can become exponential in how change could occur.
No, I mean, I totally agree. And it speaks to everything you have here, empathy, generosity, kindness. I mean, you stop and you think about it, you have a neighbor, and that neighbor doesn't vote the way you do. They got signs in their yard or don't have signs in their yard, which is the joke on our street. If you don't have a sign, you're voting for Trump, right? um, and but whatever the case, right? They don't align with you politically. If their house is on fire and they can't get out, and the fire department, you know what? I'm going over with the ladder. I don't care,
Right.
right? I don't care. It's down to
Yes.
humanity, and the reality is a lot of these issues don't even touch our lives.
Yeah.
They don't even touch our lives. Well, the taxes are going to go up. Yeah, okay, they go up a
Yeah.
percent. You
And
know?
if there's tariffs that's going to affect us financially and things like that, all of that stuff is true, but it's like there's nothing I can do about it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I can sit around and complain and I can hate the neighbor who voted this way or that way, or he comes
Yeah.
over for a cup of sugar. Nah, get out of here. I'm not helping you anymore.
Yeah.
But what's it gonna do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I look at the world scene and I'm like, I wish I could bring world peace. I wish I could stop hunger all over the globe. I wish I could stop children from being harmed, but I can only affect the little amount of the earth that I can affect. And if we
Yeah.
focus on that and you do it with empathy, that has a wide branching effect because people will look at you and go, wow, like that guy's got something going on and they want to know more about it.
Yeah.
Every time I do some teaching, I ask people to do an exercise with me. I say, think of one person in your life that you would consider the most humble person that you know. And when you have that person in your mind, think of two or three words of how they make you feel when you're with them. And I usually get words like empowered, loved, valued, special. And I'm like, so do you hear what you're saying? The person who you consider to be the most humblest person in your life makes you feel some of the most amazing emotions that you could ever say.
Yeah.
Now, how would you feel if you were outside the room and you heard someone talking about you that way? I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing? I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what you want. So when you don't, movies and TV tell us you got to be brutal, you got revenge, you need this, you need that. No, when we say, I ask you to think of someone who's brutal in your life, how do they make you feel? Scared, worried, afraid,
Yeah.
that's not what you want. So if you be that other guy, and then everyone will think you're amazing.
Yeah. I I've shared the story on this podcast at least once. When I have a law degree, started my career as a tax consultant in Big Six accounting, Big Four accounting now, and I remember that first 3 months having the boss come into the cubicle pit and just basically announce or say, "Who do I need to fire around here to get some
Oh,
work done?"
oh,
And I think we've gone a long way. We've gotten away
yeah,
from that,
yeah, We have.
But Chris, you're right. It's kind of replaced itself with this tribalism around issues in politics, and
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I don't
I think
know.
political correctness has kind of changed like th those old times, that
Yeah,
saying things like that, like motivating people through fear. I think most employers know that doesn't work.
yeah,
But it's like now there's this big fight over return to the office or not return to the office. And some companies are like, well, if you don't, you're fired. And some companies are like, well, we're not going to force our people to do that. And there's a divide. And it's like this is the thing that kind of shocks me about this topic that we talk about. There's no longer like just a middle ground. It's either left or right. There's
yeah,
like it's either I want you in office or I don't. And the people that don't are saying that the people that do are awful and evil and terrible, and the people that do are saying those that don't are lazy and don't care about their employees. And it's like it's not anything like, well, hey, if you want to have at office employees, and I don't want to be that, I'm not going to work for you.
yeah,
That's as simple as it is. So can't we just leave it at that? And if
yeah.
I want a remote job, can I just say I'm going to go work for a company that's remote? Great.
I I thought people would return to in-office work just by the very nature of if I'm reporting to you, Chris, right? And there's two other people reporting to you and they're not in the office, who's going to get more face time?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yes.
Why does Frank keep getting the plum assignments, Chris? I don't get it. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? He's here. I don't have to
He's here.
I don't have to text him and get him on the phone. I just, hey, when you come back from
Yeah.
getting a cup of coffee, come see me. I've got something I
Yeah.
need you to do for me, right? And I think in time those things will come back.
Yeah.
It's like handshaking and
Oh,
but there are people who like to work remote. And I love the story you told earlier about the employee. And it's like, I think we need to stop and take a deep breath and realize that that other person is just, um, they've got kids who think they're the greatest thing in the world. And they're providing for a family, and um, it's none of it's personal. It's
yeah.
none of it is.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes people just have things going on in their life. I mean, I had the flip side of that conversation where I met with an employee and they literally said, I'm so stressed doing the work here. This is such a high stress environment for me that it makes me sick, and that's why my quality isn't good. And I'm like, bro, then you need to find another job.
yeah,
I'm like, literally, you can't risk your health for your family. You have a child and a wife. You
yeah,
can't risk your health for your family for a job. It's not
yeah,
worth it. So I'm
yeah,
like, look, take the next 30 days. Stop working
yeah,
tomorrow. Let's shut off your accounts. Go find a job. And we'll just keep paying you and take care of your insurance until you can transition because you shouldn't be here if this is risking, like if it's literally killing you, you're going to have an ulcer.
yeah,
You go to bed stressed every night. You're losing your hair. Wow, no job is worth that. Like
yeah.
it's not,
Well,
so just
yeah, the
go.
the employers, the firm I work for, by the time I was done there, there was one guy, and it's like, hey, listen, take 3 months, use our
Mm,
resources, find a job. You know what he's going to do, and what he did when they took care of him. He's going to take
yeah,
care of them.
yeah.
As far as how he speaks, and he's going to work for another company. Who are they
Hmm.
going to use for their auditors or tax work? Well,
Right.
I got great friends back at the
Yeah,
firm.
exactly right.
So,
I had this
um,
client that tried to they took our service that we were doing for them, fishing as a service, and they brought it in house. So we lost a big contract. So they
yeah,
get in the call and they're like, "Hey, we're going to take this year. We're not renewing. Going to bring it in." It was representing a lot of money. So of course I was upset, but I have a book all about how to run a corporate fishing program. So I sent it to them, and inside I put a little note. I really hope this helps you succeed. Sent it to them as a goodbye gift and said, "Let me know if you need anything." Right. 6 months later, they came back and like, we did not realize how hard it was. Will you take us back as a client?
yeah,
And I'm like,
awesome.
sure. Right now, if
Yeah,
I went to them, you guys are going to fail. As soon as you do this, you're going to fail, and you know you're going to fail because you can't do the way we do. They would have never came back to us. They
yeah,
would have went and found someone else because I treated them like garbage when they left.
yeah,
Right. So you got to treat people with that dignity and empathy because it just goes such a long way. Even if you don't think they deserve it, it just goes such a long way in making your character better.
yeah. No, I totally agree. Um, I have a membership-based organization, and there was a member that owed money. This was probably 10 years ago, and he drove to the office to hand deliver a check. He was just so mad. Somebody was collecting from one of my franchisees. He delivered the check and literally had his friend there. to take a picture as evidence that he gave us the check. I mean, it was the funniest thing, and he was mad and ready to just pay the money and be done with the organization. And I'm just like, hey, cool down, just cool down. It's not that big of a deal. And we had just a great conversation. And before the conversation was over, he's like, well, my dues are paid. I just want to stay in now. Like, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole notion of, as you keep saying in here, empathy, generosity, kindness, it really goes a long way.
It does.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, work you're doing, how the listening audience can help you. You do have a book out there. It's buy the book. The book is Human Hacking: Win Friends, Influence People, and Achieve Your Goals. And it's out in Amazon or wherever else you can find it. It's Kindle, audiobook, the whole schmear. How can people help you beyond buying the book?
I mean, you can come to social-engineer.com. You can visit our web there and see all the things that we do. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can set up a time to chat. And one other thing I'll mention is 8 years ago, I started a nonprofit where a group of us help law enforcement geolocate people that traffic children and create child abuse materials called the Innocent Lives Foundation. So if anybody out there is listening that has children, they're interested in supporting a mission like that or just getting information to talk to their kids about these horrible things, you can go to innocentlivesfoundation.org. And there was a lot there for people that are taking care of kids and trying to keep kids safe.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.